Hey guys, we are in the third video of the series. We are doing 15 videos in September, a video every other day. Each video is going to be a high-level hero guide where I break apart the competitive scene all the way back to Heroes Lounge Season 2, Next Gaming Series this previous season, anything new that's been happening in the last few months. And I try to focus on heroes who haven't been changed too much since I've done since these videos were. With that being said, there is a sponsor for today's episode. You guys have heard it the last couple episodes, which is GenoPalette. GenoPalette, if you ever feel a little off and you're not really sure why, it could be your diet. It might not align very well with your genetics. A lot of research that they've done recently determined that your diet has a lot to do with your genetics on what type of nutrients you can actually absorb based on your genetics. So you can do a genetic test and determine what kind of diet you can do to have it better absorb the different nutrients. You can get $20 off by using the code NotParadox, and wow, this is brutal. That being said, click the link down below if you're interested in that at all. If not, let's stay in this game. We are looking at Nick's Kerrigan. Nick was a competitive pro player during HGC and also a player that's been very popular since then, as Nick is a streamer. You can check Nick's streams mostly during any Europe times. So if you're a North America player, you might not be able to catch Nick while Nick's streaming, but Europe, Nick is very, very popular. And an awesome player at that. So with that being said, this is Nick's Kerrigan. Now, the thing that Nick's Kerrigan generally does on this map is more looks to follow up rather than combo. This is something different from a lot of Kerrigan players who focus so heavily on the combo itself, where Nick is more there to usually follow up Anubarak stuns or follow up Chromies. Nick will play a little bit more towards the macro side of things and the follow-up side of things, which is different from most Kerrigan players I see, and it's a much more consistent playstyle of Kerrigan. The challenge I find a lot of times with Kerrigan is if you're good against Kerrigan, you're going to know how to dodge the majority of her combos. You're going to know how to deal with the majority of what she's trying to do. And it makes it to where you lose that consistency factor of a lot of other heroes. Yet Kerrigan was actually surprisingly popular. She was used by Dignitas in the grand finals of HGC, and they did really well with her. But the thing is just that inconsistency factor. If you miss those combos, you miss essentially 60 to 70% of what Kerrigan actually does. And that's why his build is more focused on not comboing himself, but more just following up. Which, again, the few times that he does try to combo himself, he can get punished because these players know how to play against that. They know exactly what to do when Kerrigan tries to combo. It's easy in low ranks, but it gets really challenging the higher ranks you get up because people know how to dodge it. So, with that all being said, let's see again. He's still just covering what his team needs, and that is his early playstyle. So let's talk about his early build. The first talent that he takes is Fury of the Swarm. Fury of the Swarm is a talent that you gain 10% more simulation shield from basic attacks. After casting Ravage, Kerrigan's next basic attack within 3 seconds splashes for 100% of the damage around the target, meaning if you Q an auto attack, you're going to build a huge amount of shield by hitting a bunch of enemies all at the same time. And because you have 2 stacks of Ravage, it allows you to use a Q and then auto attack, Q auto attack, and get huge shields from 2 different cleaves. He then takes the talent Sharpened Blades, which arguably, for me, I've always been debated on this talent on whether or not it's good, and it definitely shifts from the meta that we've been seeing where people have been going more the kinetic build or even the psionic pulse build. So seeing the Q build coming out from Kerrigan is definitely different, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Sharpened Blades, what this does is it's a quest. Minions and heroes that die within 1.5 seconds of being hit by a Ravage increase its damage of 75. Minions gain 1 increased damage and heroes gain 5 increased damage. So if you kill a hero, you get 5. If you kill a minion, you get 1. And then after reaching 75 bonus damage, you gain an extra 50. Remember, this doesn't scale with level, it just scales with the quest being done. So at a max, this is worth 125 extra damage on your Q. Then we have Boundless Fury, that every time that you hit a different hero, you get another charge of Ravage. So if you're bouncing around the enemy team, you can hit all of the enemies and then end up going for something else, which is kind of nice. So it's definitely something that you can do, and it's definitely something that can be very, very valuable, especially in the fights that get chaotic, because you're constantly hopping around those fights. So that is the early portion. That is the current build, and that gives you an idea of how he's going to play in team fights. Wait for his CC to hit from something on his team, follow up with your W, and then hop around their team and be as disruptive as possible while spreading out the damage and seeing if you can get the enemies to turn around on you. At level 10, though, there's something that he generally takes, which is a little bit different from what a lot of other people take, and that is Summon Ultralisk. And again, it's because he plays more of a follow-up role rather than a jump-in, hyper-carry, try to engage and get as much value with Maelstrom as possible. He tends to run Ultralisk. Now, I'm curious to see if he goes with Ultralisk again this game, or if he ends up going with Maelstrom, because he has taken both of those before. And right here, they're going against a team that's level 10, so they need to back off. He can try to stun, but he's already used his stun, and it's a really long cooldown. So this likely won't be the Mosh Interrupt for them. Most likely their Mosh Interrupt is going to be a Q from a Nubarak, or actually, that's probably their only Mosh Interrupt, really. I guess they could do like the Kerrigan, because I believe Kerrigan's dash gives him unstoppable too, but it doesn't give him unstoppable until he hits someone, so he'd have to hit someone and then jump in and hit another person, and that only is 1 second of unstoppable. So it's going to be interesting. We have Cocoon. I mean, really, if a Nubarak gets moshed, they're probably all going to get moshed. Oh, we do have Ultralisk as another potential interrupt, because it does stun the first person hit for 0.5 seconds. Yeah, I think that would be another potential interrupt for Mosh. So in this case, the enemies do get the first dragon, and they end up just jumping on the enemies, taking them out rather quickly. This is Max Passion and Maka that they just took out. Both of those were pro players in HGC, so it's not like they're just stomping any random team here. And they're not really stomping. I mean, they got some good kills, but ultimately they still need to deal with this Dragonite. So what you see here is Nick is focusing on macro. Again, he's covering everything that his team is missing, and he can go for combos here and there, but do you see? He just does his W, and then he does his E only because he knows that it won't pull him away from the W, because they were in the Entomb. So again, he's playing more of a macro and follow-up. You could argue that any mage could do this, so I want to see what made him want to go with Kerrigan over just like a KT, for example. A KT has a very similar follow-up on a similar cooldown, and a KT has a little bit more damage in the follow-up role. KT also has a pretty reliable CC and a range that keeps you away from Mosh. So I am very curious to see what he believes Kerrigan is going to bring to the table that KT couldn't, especially in the build that he's in. He is able to finish sharpened blades, but is he actually going to hop around fights enough? Oh, wow. Knew that timing perfectly. And he didn't even follow up directly. He did do the pull to pull him into the blades, which is interesting. The benefit of that, I mean, it only does 42 damage. The explosion's what really does the most on that. But yeah, that is kind of interesting that he decided to still pull. It is an extra 42 damage, I guess, but the way he plays out his Ravage, you can see that it almost seems like he has no cooldown on his Ravage, because he's always using it on a target and then instantly killing that target afterwards, giving that quick refund and also refunding the mana. And so you can see when he's dealing with waves, he's clearing it very, very quickly, and it almost looks like he has no Ravage cooldown. It's definitely something that everyone wants to practice. Right here we see Chrysalis. The other talents have definitely been competitive for a while, but Chrysalis they buffed to where you can now activate it to turn it back off. So it can be a really powerful tool for fights like this, where everything's just kind of going chaotic, and you need to pop your Chrysalis to prevent damage. Kerrigan gets a really good hit, and then, I mean, a silence prevents her from getting out or using, I mean, she does use Chrysalis, but just instantly dies. And then the silence prevents her from getting out in any other way. So again, that ability to jump around the fight a little bit is something that he has, but again, I wonder if it would be better to just go with KT. I say that, but I still want you guys to learn this Kerrigan playstyle, because if you do have a particular game where you feel like Kerrigan is more valuable, I mean, Kerrigan can help with camps a little bit earlier. The wave clear, you're a lot tankier, I would imagine. But I am still curious to see, because again, the follow-up is about the same as a KT would be. I'm waiting for that that value of Boundless Fury to make it worth it, or maybe there's a talent that's taken up at a later level that accounts for it, that bring that extra value. So right here, again, just a quick combo. It's a good chunk of health. I mean, half the health of them. He sends out the Ultralisk, does a little bit of damage with it, but again, nothing really crazy from this. Nothing too wild from it. Goes for a combo. Now, those are the picks that potentially could be, and that was a really good Chrysalis as well. He was able to use a Chrysalis right before the silence went off, so the silence didn't actually hit him. And then he just hopped out of the Chrysalis after gaining a little bit of life and went back. So that's probably the biggest potential reason why I would expect to see a Kerrigan over seeing someone like a KT, is that you can jump like he did. He jumped on a minion, then he jumped towards the enemy hero, and then he went for a combo. If that would have landed, he would have just instantly killed the Malfurion, where KT can almost never do something like that, because KT doesn't have that ability to dive in. But if I don't see that value this game, then again I come back to, well, maybe KT would have been better. Sure, that's running a double mage, and Kerrigan has a little bit more point and click damage, but I do always wonder, and the Korean teams have been running more double mage than any other team I've seen, so again, it could be one of those things where it's like, you almost don't need an auto attacker or a point and click. Against high mobile heroes, I could certainly see Kerrigan being a little bit more valuable, especially in Ravage, because you're just hopping around. He's actually playing this Dragon Knight out really slow. His team's still pushing bottom lane, and he's just clearing the wave and just getting slight poke. And then once Leoric starts covering the wave, he comes down here. So it's, again, it looks like he was more focused on like keeping the soak up and the macro up, rather than focusing on just getting value off of this objective. We do see a cocoon, but it seems like no one really wants to follow up that cocoon, so they end up just backing up a little bit. I think overall this was a really strange play because of how little value they got with all of the abilities that they used, like the cocoon, the Dragon Knight, everything. They didn't really get any value mid, they didn't really get any value bot, and it's late enough in the game with a healthy enough Dragon Knight, they should have at least been able to take a fort with that health bar. But maybe they were just really worried about getting moshed. But if the Dragon Knight's unstoppable, so I don't know. It's definitely a strange process that they ended up going with right there. But either way, he's just gonna go back, clear up stuff, play safe. And this is a little bit reminiscent of like the old HGC. Now I do want to point out that this was I believe this was the quarterfinals, might have been the semifinals of Div S, and this was the last game of the series. So there is a really good shot that, or chance anyways, that there was a lot of nerves. They were playing very safe because they didn't want to get dropped for no reason. And either team that would have won this game would have advanced to the next round. So this would have decided the series. So this could certainly be why he's playing so safe. So let's talk a little bit about his level 16, Painful Spikes. Enemies hit by impaling blades take additional 142 damage the next 6 times Kerrigan damages them within 5 seconds. This talent was used a lot when people were comboing it with Maelstrom because you would hit people multiple times per second. So as long as you landed a W, you would be able to burst him down very quickly, or at least get those 6 procs off very fast. I do find it a little interesting that he's going with that instead of possibly Ravage granting spell power, but I guess since he's not jumping in their backline, he doesn't really need that either. And I mean, this also seems pretty good because if he can follow up a CC with his stun and then also follow up with the Impaling Blades, then he'll get the benefit of the 35% extra spell power. But I don't know. I guess Painful Spikes is the most consistent again, and that's essentially how he's playing Kerrigan. It's just for consistency's sake. And again, W, pull him in. The pull is what's strange. But once he actually goes, like, he does quite a bit. He's able to get out, and now they can just simply jump it. Wow, now that was pretty slick. Because he wasn't in range to stun normally, so he was able to pull him back, and the other person wasn't expecting that, so it didn't really matter. So that fight was actually probably the exception. Like, KT would have died there, KT wouldn't have been able to grab the Grey Mane. And that's where this build is kind of based. So, what I wanted to show you guys was a Kerrigan playstyle that is consistent. It's not a playstyle that you have to land a combo to get value out of it. It's a playstyle of you're always going to get macro value, as well as you're going to be able to follow up everything that your team does with a really powerful stun. And that stun can be enhanced with Painful Spikes. Now, he's even using this for siege damage. He's using his W on structures, and he's getting 6 attacks on it, which is doing 6 sets of damage. So he's actually doing an incredible amount of extra damage, while also still, again, covering everything that he needs. Now, right here, he could potentially jump over here and try to combo on these, but it's a full health dragon, or it's a 71% health anyways, Dragonite. They still have level 20 lead. They don't really need to do much, and he's almost to Ultralisk again. He could just simply throw out his Ultralisk and go for that stun, potentially go for some damage, and that's exactly what he does, and just combos and drops people. He actually combos off of his Ultralisk, where he gets the stun on the Ultralisk, and then he combos off of it. So again, he's making plays where a lot of heroes couldn't do that. Purely off of those benefits. So, and then he uses Q for mobility, where people dive on him, he dives on another hero. So against dive teams, Kerrigan could be a really, really cool option, even if you're not landing specifically combos, but just following up on your team's CC. So let's go over his build one more time. It's essentially the Q build until we hit 13 and 16, where he makes some adjustments, grabbing the Chrysalis and grabbing Painful Spikes, and he does use this on siege damage. It is worth quite a bit on siege damage if you actually add it up. 6 times 160 is like 1,000, so it adds 1,000 siege damage every time that you drop a W out. And then he takes Psionic Shift, you teleport to people, you do a bit of damage, and you generate a lot of assimilation for the damage you deal. And that is Nick's Kerrigan. It's a safer playstyle of Kerrigan, but it does get work done, and it is effective at what it tries to do. This is a playstyle that I think that a lot of people in Storm League could really benefit from, purely because of how much macro he brought to the table. 141,000 siege damage, as well as he was still able to get the picks needed to close out the game. The first half of the game, he was just keeping his team in the game with 20,000 experience contributed. And then when you reach the mid to late game, it only took 1 or 2 combos to actually close out the game. So I highly recommend trying out this playstyle and learning from that. Once again, guys, we are going to be doing this all month long, a video every other day, and this video is brought to you by Geno Palette. You can definitely check out Geno Palette if you haven't seen it already. Make sure to check it out. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.